For 4 years, I thought Vanessa was the woman I would marry. Then one night, her 3 best friends started flirting with me. At first, I thought it was a joke. Then I discovered the truth. Vanessa had sent them to test my loyalty. But the deeper I looked, the uglier the truth became. What started as a cruel game exposed secrets, manipulation, and a side of her I had never seen before. And when she finally begged for a second chance, the last people who wanted me to take her back were the 3 women she had used against me. For 4 years, I believed Vanessa was the woman I would marry. We talked about children, future vacations, and even the house we wanted to buy someday. I trusted her completely. That trust started breaking on a Friday night. Vanessa had invited me to a party hosted by her friends. At first, everything felt normal. Then Chloe walked over with a smile. "Ethan, you clean up nicely." I laughed awkwardly. "Thanks." "No, seriously," she said. "If I didn't know you were taken, I'd probably flirt with you." I blinked. "Good thing you know I'm taken." She laughed and walked away. The conversation felt strange, but I ignored it. A few minutes later, Mia appeared beside me. "Mind if I sit here?" "Sure." She sat closer than necessary. "You know," she said, "I've always thought Vanessa was lucky." "Lucky? To have someone like you." I shifted uncomfortably. "She's pretty amazing too." Mia forced a smile. "If you say so." That answer bothered me. Later that night, Rachel joined me near the balcony. "You look bored." "I'm surviving." She laughed. "I've always liked your loyalty." "That's a random compliment." "Maybe." Before I could respond, she leaned closer. "Are you happy with Vanessa?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course." Rachel studied my face. "If you say so." 3 similar conversations in one night. Something felt wrong. As I headed toward the kitchen, Chloe suddenly appeared beside me again. She lowered her voice. "Are you sure you're with the right woman?" I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She shrugged. "Forget I said anything." Then she walked away. The comment stayed in my head the entire night. Over the next few weeks, things became worse. Chloe texted me after midnight. Mia kept inviting me to coffee. Rachel sent compliments that felt too personal. I never encouraged any of it. Instead, I became increasingly uncomfortable. One evening, after another strange message arrived, I finally called Vanessa. "We need to talk." "Sounds serious." "It is." An hour later, we sat across from each other in her apartment. I placed my phone on the table. "Why are your friends acting like this?" She glanced at the screen. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. I frowned. "What's funny?" "You." "What?" She leaned back. "I wanted to see if you'd cheat." The words hit me like a punch. "You what?" "It was a test." I stared at her. "You sent your friends after me?" "It wasn't that serious." "Not serious?" She rolled her eyes. "Ethan, relax." I felt my chest tighten. "For weeks they've been flirting with me. And you passed." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Why would you do that?" She smirked. "Because I wanted proof." 4 years wasn't proof? Vanessa looked away. I continued. "I've never cheated." "I know." "I've never lied." "I know." "I've never given you a reason to doubt me." She shrugged. "I just wanted to know." The room suddenly felt smaller. Then she said something that hurt even more. "I knew you'd stay loyal. You're predictable." I froze. "Predictable?" She laughed softly. "You'd never leave me." For the first time, I saw something ugly beneath the woman I loved. Control. Confidence. Arrogance. The argument lasted another hour. Every answer revealed a side of Vanessa I had never wanted to see. When I finally left, my head felt heavy. Maybe the test wasn't the real problem. Maybe it had simply exposed one. As I reached my apartment, my phone buzzed. A new message appeared. It was from Chloe. My stomach tightened. The text contained only one sentence. "Ethan, there are things about Vanessa you don't know." I stared at Chloe's message for almost 10 minutes before replying. "What things?" Her answer came quickly. "Not over text. Meet me tomorrow." The next afternoon, I sat across from her in a quiet coffee shop. She looked nervous. "Why did you message me?" I asked. Chloe sighed. "Because I feel guilty." "Guilty about what?" "The test." I clenched my jaw. "I already know about the test." "No, Ethan. You know part of it." A knot formed in my stomach. "What does that mean?" She looked down at her coffee. "Vanessa never thought you'd cheat." I frowned. "Then why do it?" Chloe hesitated. Then she finally said it. "Because she thought it was funny." The words hit me harder than I expected. "What?" She used to joke about it. I stared at her. Joke about what? About how loyal you were. I felt my chest tighten. Chloe continued. She'd tell us, Ethan would never leave me. I could do anything and he'd stay. I couldn't speak. At first I thought she was exaggerating, Chloe said quietly. Then she came up with the test. And you agreed? I know. I'm sorry. I rubbed my face. So none of this was about trust? No. It was entertainment? She nodded. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then Chloe looked directly at me. You deserve the truth. I left the coffee shop feeling sick. That evening another message arrived. This time it was Mia. Can we talk? An hour later we met at a small diner. The moment she sat down she apologized. I'm sorry. For what? For helping her. I studied her face. You knew. I knew about the plan. I looked away. I didn't think she'd take it this far, Mia said. How far did she plan to take it? Mia hesitated. Long enough to prove she could control the situation. I laughed bitterly. The situation? You. The word stung. The following day Rachel called me. I heard you spoke to Chloe and Mia. I did. Then I'll save time. I waited. They told the truth. Everything? Everything. I closed my eyes. I sighed. Ethan, none of us expected this to become so ugly. But it did. Yes. For the first time Vanessa's friends stopped feeling like weapons. They felt like witnesses that should have helped. Instead it made everything worse. Because now I knew the truth. A few days later Jake showed up at my apartment. One look at me and he frowned. You look terrible. I've had a rough week. You've had a rough relationship. I laughed without humor. Jake sat across from me. Can I ask you something? Sure. You happy? The answer should have been easy. It wasn't. Jake nodded. That's what I thought. I stared at the floor. Then he said something that changed everything. You don't have a girlfriend, Ethan? I looked up. What? You have a prison guard. The words landed like a hammer. Every memory came rushing back. Every canceled plan. Every argument I apologized for. Every sacrifice. Every compromise. Every moment I convinced myself disrespect was love. For days I replayed it all. Then I made a decision. I called Vanessa. We need to talk. When we met, she crossed her arms. What's wrong now? I took a deep breath. We're done. She laughed. Actually laughed. You're serious? Yes. Ethan, please. I stayed silent. Then her smile returned. You'll come crawling back. For the first time I felt calm. I looked directly into her eyes. No. I won't. The first few weeks after the breakup felt strangely quiet. No arguments. No constant texts. No pressure to explain every decision. Yet somehow I still felt lost. One evening I sat in my sister Sarah's kitchen staring at a cup of coffee. She watched me for a moment. You look exhausted. I barely sleep. You still thinking about Vanessa? I nodded. Sarah sat across from me. What exactly do you miss? I opened my mouth then stopped. I don't know. Try. I stared at the table. I miss what we planned. Sarah smiled sadly. That's different. How? You don't miss Vanessa. I looked up. What? You miss the future you imagined. The words settled heavily inside me. Sarah continued. You miss the wedding. I stayed silent. You miss the house. I nodded slightly. You miss the family you thought you'd have. I slowly exhaled. For the first time I understood what she meant. I wasn't grieving the woman Vanessa actually was. I was grieving the version of her I created in my mind. That realization hurt. But it also brought clarity. A few days later Jake called me. You seen social media? No. Good. Now I was curious. What happened? Jake sighed. Vanessa's posting pictures with some guy. Mark? You know his name? She mentioned him once. Jake cursed under his breath. She's doing it on purpose. I know. You okay? I thought about it. The old version of me would have spent hours staring at those photos. This time I simply shrugged. I'm fine. Seriously? Seriously. After ending the call I put my phone away. I never looked at the pictures. Apparently that bothered Vanessa. A week later Chloe called. Can I ask something? Sure. Why aren't you reacting? To what? Vanessa keeps posting photos. I laughed softly. Because I'm tired. Tired? Of playing games. Chloe was quiet. Then she said, good. Over the next month, Chloe, Mia, and Rachel gradually became part of my life. Not romantically. As friends. One afternoon we met for lunch. Mia smiled. "You seem better." "I am." Rachel pointed at me. "You're standing straighter." "That's oddly specific." "I'm observant." Chloe laughed. "She's right." For the first time in months I laughed too. The guilt they carried slowly faded. The resentment I carried faded as well. Meanwhile, Vanessa's attempts to get my attention became more obvious. Random texts. Missed calls. Indirect messages through mutual friends. I ignored them all. The silence seemed to frustrate her more than any argument ever had. The balance was changing. For years she controlled every emotional conversation. Now she couldn't control any of them. One rainy evening I returned home from work. As I reached my apartment building I froze. Vanessa stood near the entrance. The moment she saw me she stepped forward. "Ethan." My stomach tightened. "What are you doing here?" She looked nervous. Something I had rarely seen before. "I need to talk to you." I said nothing. Her eyes filled with regret. I made a mistake. The old me would have invited her inside immediately. The old me would have listened. The old me would have hoped. But I wasn't that man anymore. I unlocked my door. Then I looked at her calmly. "Good night, Vanessa." And I refused to let her inside. A month after Vanessa appeared outside my apartment, I noticed something strange. People were talking. Not about me. About her. The first hint came during lunch with Chloe. She stirred her drink inside. "Vanessa's having a rough time." I raised an eyebrow. "How rough?" "Mark." That single word explained plenty. "What happened?" "They fight constantly." I said nothing. Chloe continued. "He gets jealous easily." "Ironic." "Very." A few days later Mia called me. "Did you hear about Vanessa?" "No." Half her friend group stopped talking to her. I leaned back in my chair. "Why?" Mia laughed bitterly. "Because people found out about the loyalty test." I wasn't surprised. The truth had a way of spreading. Especially ugly truths. Later that week Rachel joined me and Jake for coffee. Jake glanced at Rachel. "How bad is it?" Rachel shook her head. "Worse than she expected." "What happened now?" I asked. Rachel hesitated. Her brother confronted her. I remembered Daniel. He had always seemed reasonable. "What did he say?" Rachel looked directly at me. "He asked her one question." I waited. What kind of person does that to someone they claim to love? The words lingered in my mind. And? For once, Vanessa had no answer. I looked out the window. Part of me felt sorry for her. Another part remembered every humiliation she had put me through. Meanwhile, my own life kept moving forward. One morning, my manager called me into his office. "Close the door." My stomach tightened. "Everything okay?" He smiled. "Better than okay." A few minutes later, I walked out with a promotion. The news felt surreal. For years, I had organized my life around Vanessa. Now I was finally investing that energy into myself. That evening I called Jake. "Guess who got promoted?" "No way." "Way." Jake laughed. "Drinks are on you." "Fair." Over the following weeks, I reconnected with old friends. I joined weekend basketball games again. I started hiking. I even picked up photography, a hobby I had abandoned years earlier. One afternoon, Sarah noticed the change. "You seem lighter." "I feel lighter." "Why?" I thought about it. Because I'm finally living my own life. Every step forward revealed something painful. I had sacrificed more than a relationship. I had sacrificed pieces of myself. Now I was getting them back. Apparently Vanessa noticed too. Mutual friends mentioned she constantly asked about me. She wanted updates. She watched from a distance. The more my life improved, the more desperate she became. Then one night my phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. It wasn't short. It wasn't casual. It was several pages long. Apologies. Regrets. Memories. Promises. Excuses. I read every word. Then I sat quietly for a minute. Months ago that message would have changed everything. Now it changed nothing. I pressed delete. The next evening Chloe called. "Vanessa knows you read it." I sighed. "And?" She asked if you replied. I didn't. There was a long pause. Then Chloe spoke softly. I've never seen her cry like that. I looked at the dark screen in my hand. For the first time, Vanessa was realizing something I had already accepted. I truly wasn't coming back. And that realization finally broke her. Nearly 3 months passed before Vanessa finally got what she wanted. A meeting. She asked through mutual friends. Then through Chloe. Then through Daniel. Eventually I agreed. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Because I wanted closure. When I arrived at the cafe, she was already waiting. The difference shocked me. The confident woman I once knew seemed gone. She looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. When she saw me, she stood immediately. "Thank you for coming." I sat down. "Say what you need to say." For a moment she struggled to find words. Then she whispered them. "I love you." The sentence landed between us. Months ago it would have meant everything. Now it felt strangely distant. Vanessa looked down. "I know I ruined everything." I stayed silent. "I know I hurt you." Still silence. Tears gathered in her eyes. "Ethan, I'm sorry." She repeated it again. And again. And again. For almost an hour. Every apology sounded genuine. Every regret sounded real. Finally she looked directly at me. "I never appreciated what I had." Those words hurt more than the others. Because they were true. For a moment I remembered 4 years together. The vacations. The late-night conversations. The dreams we built. Part of me wanted to forgive her. Part of me wanted to believe people could change. But doubt remained. After the meeting ended, I called Chloe. I met her. I figured. "What do you think?" There was a long pause. Then Chloe sighed. "You deserve to know something." My stomach tightened. "What?" That wasn't the only test she planned. I froze. "What?" "We found messages." I sat upright. "What messages?" Chloe hesitated. Vanessa talked about doing more. The room suddenly felt colder. Later that evening, Mia and Rachel joined the call. Rachel spoke first. "Chloe's telling the truth." I rubbed my forehead. "You're serious?" "Unfortunately." Mia sighed. "The first test got out of control. But it wasn't supposed to be the last one." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You mean she planned more?" "Yes," Rachel answered quietly. "Why?" No one spoke immediately. Then Mia finally answered. "Because she liked the power." The words crushed whatever hope remained. For months I had wondered whether the loyalty test had been a terrible mistake. Now I knew it hadn't been. It had been a choice. A repeated choice. The next day I met Chloe, Mia, and Rachel for lunch. The atmosphere felt heavy. Finally Mia looked directly at me. "If you go back, she'll learn nothing." I stared at my coffee. "You think people can't change?" "I think consequences matter." Nobody argued. Because everyone knew she was right. That evening Vanessa asked to see me again. Against my better judgment I agreed. When we met, she immediately stepped closer. "I miss you." I didn't respond. "I think about you every day." Still silence. Then she reached for my hand. For one painful second, old memories rushed back. The life we planned. The future we imagined. The love I once felt. Then I remembered everything else. The lies. The games. The test. Vanessa's fingers touched mine. Gently, without anger or hesitation, I pulled my hand away. After I pulled my hand away, I thought Vanessa would finally stop. She didn't. A week later, Sarah called me. "Your ex contacted me." I sighed. What did she want? Help. I laughed softly. And? I told her I couldn't fix what she broke. A few days later, Jake called. Guess who messaged me? Vanessa. Yep. What did she say? She wanted advice. I shook my head. What did you tell her? The truth. I smiled slightly. Which was? Jake didn't hesitate. That she lost the best thing she ever had. Even then, Vanessa refused to quit. She contacted mutual friends. She sent messages. She kept searching for someone willing to help. Nobody did. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel called me. Can we talk? Sure. His voice sounded tired. She spoke to our mother. I leaned forward. How did that go? Daniel laughed bitterly. Not well. What happened? There was a pause. Then he repeated the conversation. Mom listened to everything. And? Then she looked at Vanessa and said something simple. I waited. Daniel sighed. Love is trust. You destroyed yours. The words stayed with me long after the call ended. For the first time, nobody was making excuses for Vanessa. Not even her family. Meanwhile, I faced a different battle. A quieter one. Every night, I asked myself the same question. Was I truly moving on? Or was I simply hiding my feelings better? One evening, I sat alone on my apartment balcony. My phone buzzed. Another message from Vanessa. I didn't open it. Instead, I stared at the city lights. Then I imagined my future. At first, Vanessa appeared in every version of it. That had always been true. Every goal. Every dream. Every plan. Somehow she was always there. But that night something changed. I pictured the future again. This time she wasn't in it. The realization surprised me. Not because it hurt. Because it didn't. For months I thought letting go would feel devastating. I thought it would leave a hole inside me. Instead it felt peaceful. Calm. Light. For the first time in years I felt completely free. The answer had finally arrived. I wasn't holding on to the past anymore. A few days later, Vanessa asked for one final meeting. I agreed. When she arrived, she looked defeated. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just tired. We sat in silence for several seconds. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were filled with regret. For the first time she seemed to understand. Some mistakes couldn't be fixed. Some trust couldn't be rebuilt. Some people couldn't be won back. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I should have appreciated you. I looked at her for a moment. Then I simply nodded. Nothing else needed to be said. A year can change a person more than they realize. 12 months earlier, I had been trapped in a relationship that slowly drained my confidence. Now my life looked completely different. One Saturday morning, Jake joined me for a hike. As we reached the top of a trail, he laughed. I barely recognize you anymore. That bad? That good? I smiled. Jake pointed at me. You stand differently. Apparently everyone notices that. Because you're finally happy. For once I couldn't argue. I was happy. Not because everything in life was perfect. Because I finally respected myself. Later that week I met Chloe, Mia, and Rachel for dinner. The friendship still surprised me sometimes. A year earlier, Vanessa had used them as part of her game. Now they were genuine friends. Rachel raised her glass. To growth. I'll drink to that, Chloe said. Mia smiled. We've all changed. She was right. Chloe had become more honest. Rachel had become more compassionate. Mia had become more confident. And I had learned the difference between love and control. At one point Chloe looked at me. Any regrets? I thought carefully. Only one. The table became quiet. What is it? Mia asked. I ignored warning signs for too long. Nobody disagreed. The lesson had cost me 4 years. But it had also changed my life. Not long after that dinner, something unexpected happened. I saw Vanessa again. I was leaving a bookstore when I noticed her walking toward me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled sadly. Hi, Ethan. Hi. She looked different. Quieter. Calmer. The arrogance that once defined her seemed gone. For several seconds we simply stood there. Then she broke the silence. I still think about us. I nodded slowly. So do I. Hope briefly appeared in her eyes. Then I continued. I don't regret loving you. Her expression softened. The words clearly meant something to her. But I wasn't finished. I took a breath. And I don't regret leaving either. Tears immediately filled her eyes. For a second I worried she might argue. Instead she nodded. A small, painful nod. For the first time she accepted the truth. No excuses. No games. No attempts to change my mind. Just acceptance. We stood there quietly. Then she smiled one last time. I hope you're happy. I returned the smile. I am. She nodded again. Good. A moment later we walked away in opposite directions. As I continued down the street I realized something important. The greatest revenge had never been making Vanessa suffer. The greatest revenge was becoming someone she could never control again. I looked ahead at the life waiting for me. For the first time in years the future felt completely mine. And I knew one truth would stay with me forever. Self-respect was worth more than any relationship.